The divorce papers arrived on a Tuesday morning, delivered by a process server who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. As I stared at the official documents in my trembling hands, I couldn't help but wonder, how did one careless insult and a night of public laughter lead to this moment? What began as my attempt to chase validation had ended with my husband walking away, leaving me exposed before everyone I thought was on my side. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning, when I still believed I was the victim in this story. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The bass thumped through the downtown club speakers as I adjusted my black dress for the third time that evening. The fabric clung to my curves in all the right places, and I could feel eyes on me from across the crowded dance floor. At 32, I still had it, still could command attention when I walked into a room. "Ianthe, you look amazing tonight," my friend Jessica shouted over the music, her martini sloshing dangerously close to the rim of her glass. "I can't believe Caleb didn't want to come out with us." I rolled my eyes dramatically, taking a long sip of my Cosmopolitan. You know how he is, always buried in his computer, fixing other people's IT problems. Sometimes I wonder if he even remembers he has a wife. The lie rolled off my tongue so easily. Truth was, Caleb had offered to come. He'd even suggested we make it a date night, just the two of us. But I'd insisted on girls' night out, claiming I needed space to breathe. What I really needed was an audience for what I was planning. "Well, his loss is our gain," said Amanda, my co-worker from HR. She gestured toward the bar where a tall, dark-haired man was mixing drinks with theatrical flair. "And speaking of gains, that bartender has been checking you out all night." Rafa Moreno. I'd noticed him the moment we walked in. Event promoter, according to his Instagram profile, that I'd already stalked during my bathroom break. 30 years old, single, and exactly the kind of dangerous distraction I was craving. "He's cute," I said with practiced nonchalance, "but I'm married, remember?" "So, you're just looking," Jessica giggled. "Besides, when's the last time Caleb made you feel desired? When's the last time he fought for your attention?" Never, I wanted to say, but that wasn't entirely true either. Caleb showed his love in quiet ways. Morning coffee prepared exactly how I liked it. My car mysteriously filled with gas when I forgot. Small repairs around our apartment handled without me even asking. But those gestures felt invisible compared to the electric thrill of a stranger's appreciative gaze. "I'm going to get another drink," I announced, smoothing down my dress. The walk to the bar felt like a runway. I could sense conversations pausing, heads turning. This was the feeling I'd been missing, the intoxicating power of being wanted, being seen as desirable rather than just there. "What can I get for the most beautiful woman in the room?" Rafa's accent carried just a hint of his Puerto Rican heritage, and his smile was pure trouble. "Surprise me," I said, leaning against the bar just enough to show I was interested. As he mixed my drink with elaborate flourishes, we fell into easy conversation. He was charming, funny, and most importantly, he hung on my every word like I was the most fascinating person he'd ever met. When he asked for my number, I hesitated for exactly 3 seconds before giving it to him. "Your husband's a lucky man," he said, sliding my drink across the bar. "Sometimes I wonder if he knows that," I replied, taking a photo of my colorful cocktail and posting it to my Instagram story with the caption, "Finally feeling alive again." What I didn't notice was the figure in the corner booth, partially hidden by shadows. Caleb sat alone with a beer he'd barely touched, having changed his mind about staying home. He'd wanted to surprise me, maybe join us for a drink or two. Instead, he watched his wife flirt with another man while posting about feeling alive, as if their 8 years of marriage had been some kind of death sentence. He didn't approach, didn't cause a scene. He simply finished his beer, left cash on the table, and walked out into the cool night air. By the time I returned to my friends, giddy from Rafa's attention and the validation I'd been craving, Caleb was already home. I found him in bed, apparently asleep, though something about his stillness felt different, more deliberate. "How was your night?" he asked quietly, not opening his eyes. "Fine, just girl talk and overpriced drinks." Another lie, but what was the harm? Nothing had actually happened. I was just having fun, feeling young again. Surely I was entitled to that much. The next morning, Caleb was gone before I woke up. His coffee mug sat clean in the sink, and there was no fresh pot waiting for me. A small break in routine that should have been my first warning. The text from Rafa came 3 days later. "Can't stop thinking about our conversation. Coffee sometime." I stared at the message while sitting in my HR coordinator cubicle, my heart racing with the thrill of possibility. Around me, the familiar sounds of office life continued, keyboards clicking, phones ringing, the distant hum of the copy machine. But all I could focus on was those simple words and the way they made me feel electric. "Just coffee," I whispered to myself. "What's the harm in coffee?" At home that evening, Caleb seemed more distant than usual. He'd always been the quieter type, thoughtful, methodical in his approach to everything from work problems to weekend plans. But now there was something different in his silence, something that felt almost watchful. "How was work?" he asked as I heated up leftover Chinese takeout. "Same as always, dealing with everyone else's drama." I kept my voice light, casual. "What about you? Fix any major disasters today?" "A few, nothing I couldn't handle." He sat at our small dining table, scrolling through something on his tablet. "I saw your Instagram story from the other night. Looked like you had fun." My stomach tightened slightly. "Yeah, it was nice to get out. You should come with us sometime." "Maybe." He didn't look up from his screen. "Who was the bartender in the background of that photo Jessica posted?" The question caught me off guard. I hadn't even seen Jessica's photo, hadn't realized Rafa might be visible in it. "I don't know. Just some guy working there, I guess." Caleb nodded slowly, still not meeting my eyes. "Looked like you two were having quite the conversation." "We were just ordering drinks, Caleb. Don't be paranoid." The word paranoid hung in the air between us like a challenge. For a moment, I thought he might push back, might actually fight for once. Instead, he simply nodded again and returned to his tablet. That night, I responded to Rafa's text. "Coffee sounds nice. When were you thinking?" Over the next 2 weeks, those coffee dates became lunch meetings, which became long conversations that stretched into the evening. Rafa was everything Caleb wasn't. Spontaneous, passionate, full of stories about the events he promoted and the exciting people he met. He made me feel like I was part of something bigger, more vibrant than my quiet life of work and routine dinners. "Your husband doesn't appreciate what he has," Rafa said during one of our meetings at a trendy cafe downtown. "If you were mine, I'd never let you feel invisible." The comment sent a thrill through me, even as a small voice in my head whispered warnings. But I pushed that voice aside. I wasn't doing anything wrong. We were just talking, just enjoying each other's company. I deserved to feel appreciated, didn't I? At home, the atmosphere grew increasingly tense. Caleb had started keeping a small notebook on his desk, and I'd caught glimpses of dates and times written in his precise handwriting. When I asked about it, he'd simply said it was for work projects. "You've been working late a lot lately," he observed one evening, as I came home from another overtime shift that had actually been spent walking through the city with Rafa. "Budget season," I lied smoothly. "You know how crazy things get in HR." "Right, budget season." He was sitting on our couch, laptop open, but his attention was entirely focused on me. "Funny thing, though, I called your office around 6 to see if you wanted me to pick up dinner. Amanda said you'd left hours ago." My blood ran cold, but I forced myself to stay calm. "I had to run errands. Why are you checking up on me, Caleb? This isn't like you." "Isn't it?" He closed his laptop with a soft click. Maybe the question is whether this is like you, Ianthe, because lately, I'm not sure I recognize my own wife. Don't be dramatic. I'm the same person I've always been. Are you? He stood up, and for a moment I thought he might actually confront me directly. Instead, he headed toward our bedroom. I'm going to bed early. Long day tomorrow. After he left, I found myself staring at that notebook on his desk. My fingers itched to open it, to see what he'd been writing, but something held me back. Instead, I grabbed my phone and texted Rafa. Miss talking to you. This house feels so cold lately. His response was immediate. You deserve better. You deserve to feel alive. That weekend, Caleb's sister Lydia came over for brunch, a monthly tradition that had started when we first got married. She was only 4 years older than me, but something about her steady teaching career and no-nonsense attitude always made me feel like she was judging my choices. You look tired, Ianthe, she said as I set down a plate of store-bought pastries. Everything okay? Just busy with work. I avoided her probing gaze, focusing instead on arranging the food. You know how it is. Actually, I don't. Teaching keeps me plenty busy, but I've never looked quite so frazzled. Caleb emerged from the kitchen with coffee, and I noticed the way Lydia's eyes followed him, taking in his unusually quiet demeanor. The three of us had always had an easy dynamic, but today felt strained, like we were all performing roles we'd suddenly forgotten how to play. How are things at the school? Caleb asked his sister, settling into his chair with the careful movements of someone trying very hard to appear normal. Good. Challenging, but good. The kids are preparing for their spring concert. Lydia paused, stirring her coffee thoughtfully. Speaking of performances, I saw some interesting photos on social media this week. My heart skipped a beat. Oh. Jessica posted some fun shots from your girls' night out. Looked like quite the party. It was just a few drinks, I said quickly. Nothing crazy. I didn't say it was crazy, but there was one photo. Lydia pulled out her phone, scrolling through her feed. Here it is. You look like you're having a great time talking to that bartender. The photo filled her screen, me leaning across the bar, laughing at something Rafa had said, my body language clearly flirtatious. In the background, barely visible but unmistakably there, was Caleb's profile, as he sat alone at his corner table. Wait, I said, my voice coming out sharper than intended. Caleb, you were there that night? He looked up from his coffee, his expression unreadable. I changed my mind about staying home, thought I'd surprise you. Why didn't you come over? Why didn't you say anything? You seemed occupied. Lydia's gaze moved between us, clearly sensing the undercurrent of tension. Maybe I should go. Let you two talk. No, stay, I said quickly. There's nothing to talk about. I was just being friendly to the bartender. That's called good manners. Is it? Caleb's voice was quiet, but there was something sharp underneath. Is that what we're calling it? The accusation hung in the air like smoke. For a moment, I felt a flicker of guilt, a recognition that maybe I had crossed some invisible line. But then I remembered how invisible I'd felt for months, how Caleb never seemed to really see me anymore, and the guilt transformed into defensive anger. I can't believe you're making this into something it's not, I said, standing up abruptly. I talked to a bartender, Caleb. I smiled and made conversation like a normal human being. Since when is that a crime? Since you started lying about where you've been every night this week. The words hit like a slap. Lydia's eyes widened, and she started to push back from the table. I really should. No, Lydia, you should hear this, I interrupted, my voice rising. You should hear how your brother has become so paranoid and controlling that he's tracking my every move, questioning every conversation I have with another human being. Ianthe, Caleb started. Don't Ianthe me. You want to know where I've been? I've been having coffee with a friend who actually listens when I talk, who makes me feel like I matter. Is that so terrible? Is wanting to feel appreciated such a sin? A friend, Caleb repeated slowly. Is that what Rafa Moreno is? A friend? The fact that he knew Rafa's name sent a chill down my spine, but I pushed forward. Yes, a friend. And the fact that you apparently investigated him says everything about where your head is right now. My head is with my wife, who's been lying to me for weeks. I haven't been lying. Haven't you? He pulled out his phone, scrolling to something. Tuesday. You said you were working late. Your keycard shows you left the office at 3:47 p.m. Wednesday, you said you had a dentist appointment. Dr. Morrison's office says you cancelled that appointment 2 weeks ago. Thursday. Stop. The word came out as a whisper. Just stop. Lydia was staring at both of us now, her teacher instincts clearly recognizing a situation spiraling out of control. Maybe you two need some space to work this out privately. But I was beyond caring about privacy. The walls I'd built around my secret friendship with Rafa were crumbling, and instead of owning up to the truth, I doubled down on my anger. You want to know what the real problem is here, I said, my voice shaking. The problem is that I've been slowly disappearing in this marriage, and instead of fighting for me, instead of trying to win me back, you're sitting in corners spying on me and keeping little notebooks like some kind of stalker. Caleb's face went pale. Stalker? What else would you call it? Following me, checking up on me, investigating my friends. I call it trying to save my marriage. By treating me like a criminal. By trying to understand why my wife has been lying to me every single day for 3 weeks. The number was so precise, so specific that it stopped me cold. 3 weeks. Had it really been that long? Had I really been deceiving him for 21 consecutive days? I think, Lydia said carefully, that you both need to take a step back and... No, I interrupted. I think what I need is some air. I think what I need is to get away from all this suspicion and paranoia and actually spend time with someone who trusts me. I grabbed my purse and headed for the door, leaving behind the wreckage of our Sunday brunch and the stricken expression on my husband's face. As I walked to my car, I could hear Lydia's voice through the open window, low and urgent. Caleb, what are you going to do? His response was too quiet to make out, but something about his tone made me drive away faster than I should have. The text I sent to Rafa from my car was desperate. Can you meet me? I need to get away from everything right now. His response came within minutes. Of course. Riverside Park? I'll bring coffee. Sitting on a bench overlooking the water, I poured out my frustrations to Rafa while he listened with the kind of focused attention I'd been craving for months. He was sympathetic, understanding, everything Caleb wasn't being. He's trying to control you, Rafa said, his hand finding mine on the bench between us. That's not love, Ianthe, that's possession. The warmth of his fingers intertwined with mine felt like validation, like proof that I wasn't crazy for wanting more than what my marriage was giving me. When he leaned in and kissed me softly, I didn't pull away. I should go, I whispered against his lips, but I didn't move. Should you? Or do you think you should because that's what you've been told to think? It was a question that echoed in my mind for the rest of the day. By the time I returned home that evening, I had convinced myself that I was the victim in this situation. Caleb's suspicions, his tracking of my movements, his cold distance, all of it was proof that he didn't trust me, didn't value me the way Rafa did. Caleb was in his home office when I walked in, the door partially closed. I could see him through the gap, typing steadily on his laptop, occasionally consulting that damn notebook. He looked up when he heard me come in, but didn't say anything. I'm back, I announced unnecessarily. I can see that. Are we going to talk about what happened earlier? He stopped typing and turned in his chair to face me. Do you want to talk, Ianthe? Or do you want to tell me more lies about your friend Rafa? The kiss was still fresh on my lips, and guilt made me defensive. There's nothing to lie about. Isn't there? He reached for a manila folder on his desk, opening it to reveal printed screenshots. These are from your Instagram stories over the past 3 weeks. Notice anything interesting about the locations? My stomach dropped as I recognized the coffee shops, restaurants, and street corners where I'd met Rafa. Each photo was time-stamped, creating a clear pattern of my movements. You've been stalking my social media now too. I've been trying to understand why my wife has been lying to me every single day. His voice was steady, controlled, but I could see the pain in his eyes. These locations match up perfectly with the times you told me you were working late or running errands. So what if they do? I'm allowed to go places, Caleb. You're allowed to go places. You're not allowed to lie about it. He pulled out another sheet of paper. This is Rafa Moreno's Instagram profile. Interesting how he posted photos from the exact same locations at the exact same times. The evidence was damning, laid out with the methodical precision that Caleb brought to everything. But instead of confessing, instead of apologizing, I felt cornered and lashed out. This is insane, I said, gesturing at the papers. This whole investigation you've been conducting is absolutely insane. Normal husbands don't do this, Caleb. Normal wives don't lie about having affairs. I'm not having an affair. The words came out too loud, too desperate. We both knew they weren't entirely true anymore. Then what would you call it? He asked quietly. I'd call it having a friend. I'd call it feeling appreciated for the first time in months. I'd call it remembering what it feels like to be desired instead of taken for granted. Taken for granted. He repeated the phrase like he was testing its weight. Is that what I've been doing? For a moment, his vulnerability almost broke through my defenses. Almost. But then I remembered Rafa's words about control and possession, and I steeled myself. Yes, it is. When's the last time you told me I was beautiful, Caleb? When's the last time you planned something special for us, or surprised me, or made me feel like you actually wanted to be married to me instead of just going through the motions? He was quiet for a long moment, and I thought maybe I'd finally gotten through to him. Instead, he closed the folder and turned back to his computer. You're right, he said simply. I haven't been the husband you needed. I'm sorry for that. The apology should have felt like a victory, but something about his tone made it feel like a defeat instead. The next morning at work, I was still processing the strange conversation when Amanda knocked on my cubicle wall. Hey, can we talk? She asked, glancing around nervously. Privately? We walked to the break room, where Amanda poured herself a coffee with shaking hands. Ianthe, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Okay. Are you having an affair? The question hit me like a physical blow. What? Amanda, why would you? Because people are talking. The photos from the club, the way you've been leaving early, the phone calls you take in the parking lot. She sat down heavily in one of the plastic chairs. And because your husband called here yesterday. My blood went cold. Caleb called you? Not me directly. He called the main line asking to speak with you. When they transferred him to your extension and got voicemail, he asked to speak with HR about your schedule. He what? Ianthe, he knows you haven't been working the hours you told him you were working. And now I know it too. Amanda's voice was gentle but firm. As your friend, I'm worried about you. As your colleague, I have to tell you that this is becoming a problem. What kind of problem? The kind where our department head is asking questions about your productivity and reliability. The kind where people are gossiping about your marriage instead of focusing on their work. She leaned forward. The kind where I might have to write you up if this continues. The threat of professional consequences hadn't occurred to me. In my mind, my personal life and work life were completely separate. But of course they weren't. Nothing existed in a vacuum. I'm not having an affair, I said weakly. Then what are you having? It was the same question Caleb had asked, and I still didn't have a good answer. That afternoon, I met Rafa at our usual cafe, but the conversation felt different, heavier. You seem distracted, he observed, reaching across the table to touch my hand. My husband is making things difficult. How so? I told him about the investigation, the printed screenshots, the call to my office. With each detail, Rafa's expression grew more serious. That's not healthy behavior, Ianthe. That's obsessive. I know, but... No buts. This is exactly what I was talking about. He's trying to control you through intimidation and surveillance. Rafa's grip on my hand tightened. You don't have to live like that. What are you saying? I'm saying you have options. You're young, beautiful, intelligent. You could start over. We could start over. The suggestion hung between us like a bridge I wasn't sure I was ready to cross. But the idea of escaping Caleb's cold analysis, his notebooks and folders, and methodical documentation of my failures was tempting. I should probably go home, I said, but I didn't move to leave. Should you? Or do you think you should? It was becoming his favorite question, and each time he asked it, the answer became a little less clear. When I finally did go home, I found Caleb in the kitchen making dinner for two. The normalcy of it, the familiar sounds and smells of our domestic routine, felt surreal after the afternoon's conversation about starting over. How was work? He asked without looking up from the stove. Fine. I watched him carefully, looking for signs of the obsessive behavior Rafa had described. How was yours? Productive. Fixed a server issue that's been plaguing the accounting department for weeks. Good for you. We ate in relative silence, the conversation stilted and careful. It wasn't until we were cleaning up that Caleb spoke again. Ianthe, I want you to know that I heard what you said yesterday, about feeling taken for granted, about needing to feel desired. I paused in loading the dishwasher. Okay. I know I haven't been the most romantic husband lately. I get caught up in work, in routines. I forget to show you how much you mean to me. There was something in his voice that made me look at him more closely. He seemed smaller somehow, deflated. I've been thinking about ways to change that, he continued. Maybe we could plan a weekend away, or start having regular date nights again. Whatever you need. It was everything I'd claimed to want, but hearing it now felt hollow. Too little, too late, and underneath his words, I could sense the same methodical approach he brought to everything else, as if he were debugging our marriage like one of his computer problems. That sounds nice, I said, but my heart wasn't in it. Does it? Because you don't sound like you mean that. I closed the dishwasher and turned to face him. Caleb, I appreciate the effort, I really do. But I think we're past the point where a few date nights are going to fix what's wrong between us. Are we? What point are we at exactly? The question was a trap, and we both knew it. If I was honest about how far things had gone with Rafa, if I admitted that I was already emotionally checked out of our marriage, then there would be no going back. But if I lied, if I kept pretending this was just about feeling unappreciated, then I was committing to more weeks or months of this suffocating tension. I don't know, I said finally. I just know that I'm not happy. He nodded slowly, as if confirming something he'd already suspected. Then I guess we need to figure out what comes next. Something about the way he said it made me think he already knew. The next few days passed in a strange, suspended calm. Caleb was polite but distant, going through the motions of our shared life while clearly preparing for something. I caught him on long phone calls that ended abruptly when I entered the room, and his home office door stayed closed more often than not. Meanwhile, my relationship with Rafa was intensifying. What had started as coffee dates had evolved into long walks, intimate dinners, and increasingly serious conversations about the future. He painted a picture of a life free from Caleb's suffocating surveillance, where I could be appreciated for who I really was. You're glowing, he said one afternoon as we sat by the river. Even with everything you're dealing with at home, you're more alive than you've ever been. He was right. Despite the stress and guilt, I felt more like myself than I had in years. The version of me that existed with Rafa was confident, desirable, interesting. The version that went home to Caleb felt diminished by comparison. I've been thinking about what you said, I told him, about starting over. His eyes lit up. And maybe you're right. Maybe I don't have to live like this. You don't. We could go anywhere, do anything. I have connections in other cities, other opportunities. The fantasy was seductive, a clean slate, a fresh beginning, a chance to be the person I'd forgotten I could be. But there were practical considerations: our apartment lease, my job, the life Caleb and I had built together over 8 years. "It's complicated," I said. "It doesn't have to be. You're making it complicated by trying to manage everyone else's feelings instead of focusing on your own happiness." That evening, I came home to find Caleb's office door locked. It had never been locked before. We'd always had an open-door policy about personal space. When I knocked, he called out that he was on a work call and would be done soon. But I could hear him through the door, and it didn't sound like any work call I'd ever overheard. The tone was too formal, too careful, punctuated by long pauses, as if he were taking notes. "Yes, I understand the timeline," I heard him say, "and you'll need copies of everything. The financial records, the communications, all of it." My blood ran cold. Communications. He was talking to a lawyer. I pressed my ear closer to the door, straining to hear more. "No, I want to do this properly. By the book. I don't want there to be any question about the validity of the evidence." Evidence. The word hit me like a physical blow. All those folders, all that methodical documentation. He wasn't just tracking my affair, he was building a case. "When can we meet to review everything? I want to make sure we're prepared before we proceed." I backed away from the door, my heart pounding. This was really happening. Caleb wasn't just hurt or angry, he was taking action. Legal action. The office door opened 20 minutes later, and Caleb emerged looking calm and purposeful. When he saw me sitting on the couch, his expression didn't change. "Work call?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. "Something like that." "Must have been important. You locked your door." "Did I? I guess I wanted to avoid interruptions." The lie was so smooth, so unlike the Caleb I knew, that it threw me off balance. When had he learned to dissemble as easily as I did? "Is everything okay?" I pressed. "You've been acting strange lately." "Strange how?" "Secretive. Distant. Like you're planning something." He studied my face for a long moment. "Aren't we all planning something, Ianthe?" The question felt loaded with meaning I wasn't sure I wanted to understand. That night, I lay awake listening to Caleb's breathing, wondering what he knew and what he was planning to do about it. The man sleeping beside me felt like a stranger, and I realized that somewhere in the process of deceiving him, I'd lost track of who he really was underneath his quiet exterior. The next morning brought a new crisis. I was at work when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Check Instagram, now." With shaking hands, I opened the app to find that someone had tagged me in a photo from the previous evening. It was a shot of Rafa and me at the Riverside Cafe, his hand covering mine across the table, both of us leaning in close enough to look unmistakably intimate. The photo had been posted by someone named Truth Teller Local, with the caption, "When you're married but acting single, doll cheater alert, doll Riverside Cafe, how married life." My stomach dropped as I saw the comments already accumulating below the image. People I knew, people from our social circle, were liking and sharing it. Jessica had commented with a shocked face emoji. Amanda had sent me a private message. "Ianthe, what is this?" But the comment that made my blood freeze was from an account I didn't recognize. "Her husband deserves better. Someone should tell him what his wife is really up to." Someone already had, I realized. This wasn't random social media drama. This was orchestrated exposure, and I had a sinking feeling I knew who was behind it. I called in sick for the rest of the day and drove home, my mind racing through damage control strategies. But when I arrived at our apartment, I found Caleb sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop open, the Instagram post displayed on his screen. "Interesting photo," he said without looking up at me. "Caleb, I can explain." "Can you? Because it looks pretty self-explanatory to me." I sat down across from him, trying to summon the righteous indignation that had served me so well in previous confrontations. but faced with photographic evidence of my betrayal, the words wouldn't come. "It's not what it looks like," I said weakly. "What does it look like, Ianthe?" "It looks like something it isn't. It looks like my wife holding hands with another man. It looks like my wife gazing into another man's eyes like she's in love with him." His voice was steady, but I could see his hands trembling slightly. "So tell me, what isn't it?" The question hung in the air between us, heavy with the weight of 8 years of marriage and 3 weeks of lies. I could come clean now, could confess everything and beg for forgiveness. Or I could continue down the path I'd been traveling, the one that led away from this suffocating confrontation toward Rafa's promises of a fresh start. "It isn't your business," I said finally. The words came out harsher than I'd intended, but once they were spoken, I couldn't take them back. Caleb's face went completely blank, as if I'd slapped him. "My wife's affair isn't my business. My friendship isn't your business. My feelings aren't your business. My need to feel alive and appreciated instead of monitored and controlled, that isn't your business either. Your marriage vows were my business, or did those stop mattering the moment you decided you weren't getting enough attention? Don't you dare, don't I dare what? Point out that you promised to forsake all others, that you swore to be faithful in good times and bad, that you committed to working through problems instead of running to the first man who told you what you wanted to hear." His words hit like accusations because that's exactly what they were. But instead of accepting them, instead of acknowledging the truth in them, I deflected. "You want to talk about marriage vows? What about the part where you promised to love and cherish me? When's the last time you made me feel cherished, Caleb? When's the last time you made me feel like anything more than a roommate you happen to share a bed with? So this is my fault. This is both of our faults. But instead of trying to fix what was broken between us, you turned into some kind of private investigator, documenting my every move like I'm a suspect in a crime. Aren't you?" The question stopped me cold. The crime of wanting to feel desired. The crime of having someone actually listen to me and care about my thoughts and feelings. The crime of adultery, Ianthe. The crime of betraying your marriage and lying to your husband every single day for 3 weeks. I never slept with him. Didn't you? Another question that felt like a trap. Because while it was technically true that Rafa and I hadn't had sex, we'd crossed every other line that mattered. The emotional intimacy, the romantic dinners, the kisses, the promises of a future together, all of it constituted a betrayal as real as any physical act. "No," I said, but the word sounded hollow even to me. Caleb closed his laptop and stood up from the table. "I'm going to stay at Lydia's for a few days. I think we both need some space to figure out what we want." "Caleb, wait. What, Ianthe? What do you want me to wait for? Do you want to tell me you're sorry? Do you want to promise it won't happen again? Do you want to beg me to fight for our marriage?" I opened my mouth to say yes, to say all of those things, but the words wouldn't come. Because the truth was, I wasn't sure I wanted him to fight for our marriage. I wasn't sure I wanted to be married to him anymore. "I want you to understand," I said instead. "I do understand. That's the problem." He packed a bag while I sat on our bed, watching him fold clothes with the same methodical precision he brought to everything else. When he was done, he paused at the bedroom door. "For what it's worth," he said quietly, "you're right about one thing. I did take you for granted. I did get comfortable and stop making an effort. I'm sorry for that." "Caleb, but that doesn't excuse what you've done, and it doesn't change what happens next." After he left, I sat in our suddenly empty apartment and tried to figure out what I was feeling. Relief, guilt, fear, all of the above. I called Rafa and he came over within an hour, holding me while I cried, and telling me that everything would be okay, that I was finally free to choose my own happiness. But as I fell asleep in his arms on the couch, where Caleb and I used to watch movies together, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just made a terrible mistake. The next few days passed in a strange bubble of freedom and anxiety. With Caleb staying at his sister's place, I had the apartment to myself for the first time in years. Rafa practically moved in, and we played house like teenagers whose parents had gone out of town. "See how easy this is?" he said one morning, making coffee in my kitchen while wearing one of Caleb's old t-shirts. "We're good together, Ianthe. Natural." But even as I nodded and smiled, something felt off. Maybe it was the way he'd helped himself to Caleb's clothes without asking, or how he'd rearranged the living room furniture to improve the energy flow. Small things that shouldn't have mattered, but somehow did. "Have you thought about what you want to do?" he asked. "About the divorce, I mean." The word still felt foreign, too big and permanent for what was happening to us. "I don't know if that's what Caleb wants." "It doesn't matter what Caleb wants. It matters what you want." "I know, but—" "No buts, remember. You can't live your life based on other people's expectations." It was his favorite refrain, and usually it made me feel empowered, but today it just made me feel tired. My phone buzzed with a text from Lydia. "Can we talk? Just the two of us?" I showed the message to Rafa, who frowned. "She's going to try to guilt you into going back to him." "Maybe, but she's also my sister-in-law. I should at least hear what she has to say." "Should you? Or do you think you should?" The question that had once felt liberating now felt like a verbal tick, a way of dismissing any thought that didn't align with what he wanted me to think. "I'm going to meet with her," I said firmly. We arranged to meet at a neutral cafe across town, away from our usual haunts. Lydia was already there when I arrived, looking tired and older than her 36 years. "Thanks for coming," she said as I sat down across from her. "How is he?" I asked without preamble. "Caleb? He's—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "He's hurt and angry, but mostly he's just sad." I never wanted to hurt him. Didn't you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you made a series of choices specifically designed to cause him pain. The accusation stung because it carried the ring of truth. It wasn't about hurting Caleb. It was about finding myself again. By having an affair. By remembering what it felt like to be desired, to be appreciated, to feel alive. Lydia studied my face for a long moment. "Do you love him? Rafa, I mean." The question caught me off guard. In all our conversations about freedom and fresh starts, love hadn't really been the focus. I care about him. He makes me happy." "That's not what I asked." "It's complicated." "Is it? Because love isn't usually that complicated. It's either there or it isn't." I thought about Rafa wearing Caleb's shirt that morning, about the way he'd dismissed my concerns about the divorce, about how his questions always seemed to lead me toward the answers he wanted to hear. "I don't know," I admitted. "Do you love Caleb?" That question was somehow both easier and harder to answer. "I used to. I think I still do, but differently. Like a habit or a memory of love." "And is that enough reason to throw away 8 years? Is it enough reason to stay in a marriage that makes me feel invisible?" Lydia sighed and stirred her coffee. "Ianthe, can I tell you something? As someone who's watched you two together for years." I nodded. "You weren't invisible to Caleb. You were the center of his world. Maybe he wasn't good at showing it in ways you needed, but that man worshipped you. He planned his whole life around making you happy." "Then why did I feel so alone?" "I don't know. Maybe because you were looking for the wrong kind of attention. Maybe because you confused being loved with being pursued." Her words hit uncomfortably close to home. "What do you mean?" "Caleb loved you like a husband loves a wife, steadily, quietly, without drama or grand gestures. But you wanted to be loved like a conquest, like someone who had to be won over and over again." "There's nothing wrong with wanting to feel desired." "No, there isn't. But there's something wrong with mistaking security for indifference. There's something wrong with throwing away a good man because he wasn't exciting enough." "You think I should go back to him?" "I think you should figure out what you actually want before you burn down everything you've built. And I think you should be honest about whether this thing with Rafa is about love or just about ego." After she left, I sat in the cafe for another hour, turning her words over in my mind. When I finally went home, I found Rafa going through Caleb's desk in the home office. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Just looking around. This is going to be our place soon, right? I wanted to get a feel for the space." "That's Caleb's desk, his private things." "Not for much longer." He held up a folder labeled Financial Records. "Besides, don't you want to know what you're entitled to in the divorce?" Something about seeing him rifle through Caleb's carefully organized files made my stomach turn. "Put that back. Come on, Ianthe, you need to protect yourself. What if he's hiding assets?" "Caleb doesn't hide things. He's the most honest person I know." "Is he? Then why did he hire a private investigator to follow you?" I froze. "What are you talking about?" Rafa pulled out a business card from the folder. "Davis Investigations. There are receipts here for surveillance services, background checks, the whole 9 yards." The room seemed to tilt around me. "He hired someone to spy on me?" "Looks like it. Professional photos, detailed reports, GPS tracking of your movements." Rafa's voice was sympathetic, but there was something else underneath it, something that sounded almost satisfied. "This is exactly what I was talking about, Ianthe. This is obsessive, controlling behavior." But as I looked at the papers scattered across Caleb's desk, something didn't feel right. The organization was wrong. Caleb never left important documents spread out like this. He was meticulous about filing, about keeping things in their proper place. "How did you get into his desk?" I asked. "It was locked when I tried it yesterday." "Was it? It was open when I got here." Another lie, smooth and casual. I was beginning to recognize the pattern. "I want you to put everything back exactly where you found it." "Ianthe, you're not thinking clearly. This evidence could be crucial in divorce proceedings. Put it back, now." Something in my tone must have convinced him not to argue. He gathered up the papers and files, shoving them back into drawers with none of Caleb's careful organization. After he left that evening, I spent an hour trying to restore the desk to its original order, but I knew Caleb would notice the disturbance. The next morning brought a new crisis. I was getting ready for work when my phone rang. Amanda from HR. "Ianthe, I need you to come in early today. We have a meeting scheduled with the department head at 9. My blood went cold. "What kind of meeting?" "The kind where you should probably bring a union representative." The meeting was exactly as bad as I'd feared. The Instagram photo had made its way around the office, and my recent pattern of absences and half-truths had finally caught up with me. I was being written up for dishonesty and unprofessional conduct, with a warning that any further incidents could result in termination. "I'm disappointed, Ianthe," said my supervisor, a stern woman in her 50s who'd always treated me fairly. "You've been a reliable employee for 3 years. This kind of behavior is completely out of character." "I know, and I'm sorry. I've been dealing with some personal issues. Personal issues that involve lying to your colleagues and using company time for personal business." There was no good answer to that question. When I got home that afternoon, drained and humiliated, I found Caleb waiting for me in the living room. He looked different, more formal, like he was dressed for a business meeting. "We need to talk," he said. "I know. About your desk, about Rafa going through your things." "Not about that. About this." He handed me a large manila envelope with my name written on it, in official-looking script. "What is this?" "Open it." Inside were legal documents, a petition for divorce, papers for legal separation, financial disclosures. Everything was properly filed, notarized, official. "You're actually doing this," I said, the words coming out as barely a whisper. "Yes." "Just like that? No counseling, no attempt to work things out?" "Ianthe, you've been having an affair for a month. You've lied to me every single day. You've brought another man into our home, into our bed. How did you—" "I know everything. The private investigator, the photos, the hotel receipts, all of it." His voice was calm, matter of fact. I know about the emotional affair that started 3 weeks before you ever met him in person. I know about the joint bank account you opened last Tuesday. I know about the apartment applications you've been filling out together. Each revelation hit like a physical blow. Things I'd forgotten, things I'd thought were private, things I'd convinced myself didn't matter. He had documentation for all of it. I was going to tell you. When? After you'd moved out, after you'd drained our savings account, after you'd filed for divorce yourself and tried to paint me as an abusive husband. I never said you were abusive. Didn't you? What do you call telling people I was controlling and paranoid? What do you call accusing me of stalking you? The words I'd spoken to Rafa, to my friends, to anyone who would listen, came back to haunt me. In my effort to justify my actions, I'd painted Caleb as a villain when the truth was much more complicated. I want you to know, he continued, that I'm not doing this out of spite. I'm not trying to punish you or make your life difficult. I'm just protecting myself. From what? From more lies. From more betrayal. From watching the woman I love destroy both of us because she's too selfish to admit what she's really doing. The assessment was harsh but not inaccurate. Over the past month, I had become someone I didn't recognize. Manipulative, dishonest, willing to hurt the person closest to me in pursuit of my own gratification. What happens now? I asked. Now you have 30 days to respond to the petition. You should get a lawyer. And then? And then we divide our assets, figure out custody arrangements if we decide to have them, and go our separate ways. Custody? We don't have children. No, but we have a life together. Shared property, shared debts, shared history. It all has to be untangled. The clinical language made it sound so simple, so clean, but I knew it would be anything but. Caleb, don't. Whatever you're about to say, don't. I've heard enough apologies and explanations and justifications to last a lifetime. He stood up to leave, and I realized this might be the last real conversation we'd ever have as husband and wife. For what it's worth, I said, I am sorry. Not sorry I got caught, not sorry I have to face consequences, but genuinely sorry I hurt you. He paused at the door. I know you are, but sorry doesn't fix this, Ianthe. Sorry doesn't undo a month of lies. Sorry doesn't make me able to trust you again. After he left, I called Rafa to tell him what had happened. His response was immediate and supportive. We'd get through this together, start our new life sooner than planned, turn this setback into an opportunity. But as I listened to his reassurances, all I could think about was the way Caleb had looked at me, not with anger or hatred, but with a kind of exhausted sadness that was somehow worse than either. I'd gotten what I thought I wanted, so why did it feel so much like losing? The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of lawyers, paperwork, and the slow dismantling of the life Caleb and I had built together. Rafa was supportive throughout the process, helping me find legal representation and even offering to pay for my attorney fees. We're partners now, he said when I protested. Your problems are my problems. But even his generosity felt somehow calculated, as if he were investing in an outcome rather than simply helping someone he cared about. My lawyer, a sharp woman in her 40s named Patricia Morrison, was blunt about my situation. Your husband has documented everything, she said, spreading Caleb's evidence across her conference table. Financial records, communication logs, photographic evidence, witness statements. This is the most thorough case file I've seen in 20 years of family law. Is that bad for me? It's not good. In a no-fault state, adultery doesn't usually affect property division, but it can impact alimony and spousal support. And if there are any disputed assets or claims of financial misconduct. She trailed off, but I understood. Caleb's methodical approach to documenting my affair had given him significant leverage in the divorce proceedings. What about the joint account I opened with Rafa? I asked. Can Caleb claim that money? Did you use marital assets to fund it? I thought about the money I'd transferred from our savings account, telling myself it was just temporary, just in case I needed emergency funds. Some of it, Patricia made a note on her legal pad, we'll need to address that. Any other financial entanglements I should know about? There were several. The apartment deposit Rafa and I had put down together, the credit card I'd opened in my maiden name, the small personal loan I'd taken out without Caleb's knowledge. Each one seemed insignificant on its own, but together they painted a picture of someone systematically preparing to abandon her marriage. How bad is this going to be? I asked. That depends on what your husband wants. If he's vindictive, it could be very bad. If he just wants a clean break, we might be able to negotiate something reasonable. But I was beginning to understand that Caleb wasn't vindictive. He was something potentially worse. He was thorough. The final hearing was scheduled for a Friday morning in late November. I arrived at the courthouse with Patricia and Rafa, who'd insisted on coming for moral support, despite my lawyer's advice that he stay away. This is about us, he'd said, about our future together. I should be there. Caleb was already seated at the plaintiff's table with his attorney, a distinguished older man who looked like he'd been handling divorce cases since before I was born. They had 3 boxes of documents with them, each one labeled and organized with the precision I'd come to associate with my husband's approach to everything. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, reviewed the case file with the kind of thoroughness that suggested she'd seen every variation of marital breakdown imaginable. This appears to be a straightforward dissolution, she said, with the complication of documented adultery and some disputed financial assets. Mr. Voss, you're representing yourself as the petitioner. Yes, Your Honor. And you're seeking what exactly? A fair division of marital assets, assumption of my own debts, and a clean break from the marriage. No alimony claim? No, Your Honor. I can support myself. Mrs. Voss, you're contesting the financial arrangements. Patricia stood up. Your Honor, my client disputes the characterization of certain financial transactions as misconduct. The amounts in question are relatively small, and there was no intent to defraud or hide assets. I see. And the adultery claim? I felt my face burn with embarrassment. Your Honor, the marriage was already in trouble. I made mistakes, but... Mrs. Voss, this is a no-fault state. Your adultery doesn't affect the legal grounds for divorce, but it may be relevant to the financial issues. Mr. Voss, you have documentation. Caleb's attorney began presenting the evidence with clinical precision. Photos, bank records, hotel receipts, text message screenshots, all of it organized chronologically to tell the story of my affair from beginning to end. But it was more than just evidence of infidelity. It was a comprehensive record of deception, financial misconduct, and breach of trust that painted me as someone who'd systematically betrayed her marriage while planning her exit strategy. Your Honor, Patricia interjected, while my client acknowledges the affair, the financial amounts in question are minimal. We're talking about less than $8,000 total. $8,000 that belonged to the marital estate, Caleb's attorney replied, used to fund an apartment with her paramour, establish separate financial accounts, and prepare for a new life while still married to my client. The judge reviewed the documents with obvious distaste. Mrs. Voss, did you use marital assets to fund your relationship with Mr. Moreno? There was no point in lying anymore. Yes, Your Honor, but I intended to pay it back. When? After you'd left your husband and moved in with your boyfriend? The question hung in the air like an accusation, because the truth was, I hadn't really thought about paying it back. I justified the spending as temporary, as money I was entitled to, as compensation for years of feeling unappreciated. I wasn't thinking clearly, Your Honor. No, you weren't. Mr. Voss, what are you seeking in terms of financial remedy? Full restitution of the marital assets used to fund the affair, assumption of all debts incurred during the marriage, and a waiver of any future claims against my income or assets. It was more than fair. it was generous. Caleb could have sought punitive damages, could have made the process much more difficult and expensive. Instead, he was simply asking to be made whole. Mrs. Voss, do you contest these terms? I looked at Patricia, who shook her head slightly. Fighting would only make things worse and more expensive. No, Your Honour. Then this court finds that the marriage is irretrievably broken and grants the petition for dissolution. Mr. Voss, you'll prepare the final decree, incorporating the financial terms we've discussed. Mrs. Voss, you have 30 days to make restitution for the disputed amounts. The gavel came down with a finality that seemed to echo through the courtroom. Just like that, 8 years of marriage were officially over. As we gathered our things, I caught Caleb's eye across the courtroom. He looked tired but not vindictive, sad but not broken. When our eyes met, he nodded slightly. Not in friendship, but in acknowledgement that we'd both survived something difficult. Outside the courthouse, Rafa was effusive in his relief. It's over. We can finally start our real life together. But something about his enthusiasm felt hollow. During the proceedings, I'd watched him take notes on the financial details, calculating what our combined resources would be after I paid restitution to Caleb. It felt less like love and more like a business transaction. Are you okay? He asked, noticing my subdued mood. I just ended my marriage, Rafa. I'm not sure okay is the right word. But you're free now, we're free. Isn't that what we wanted? Was it? Looking back at the past 2 months, I wasn't sure what I'd really wanted anymore. Had I been seeking love or just validation? Had I been trying to find myself, or just escape from the person I'd become? That evening, I returned to the apartment I'd shared with Caleb to pack up my belongings. He'd already moved most of his things out, leaving behind only the furniture we'd agreed I could keep and a few personal items I'd forgotten. On the kitchen counter, I found an envelope with my name on it. Inside was a check for $5,000 and a short note. Ianthe, this should help with your moving expenses and getting settled. I know the restitution amount puts you in a difficult position financially, and despite everything, I don't want you to struggle. Take care of yourself. Caleb. The generosity of it, the kindness even after everything I'd put him through, broke something inside me. I sat on our old couch and cried for the first time since the whole ordeal began. Not tears of self-pity or frustration, but genuine grief for what I'd lost and what I'd thrown away. When Rafa arrived an hour later, he found me still crying. Hey, what's wrong? I thought you'd be happy. We can finally be together without any complications. I showed him Caleb's note and the check. His reaction was immediate and telling. You're not going to cash that, are you? It could complicate the divorce decree. The divorce is final, Rafa, and this is just him being kind. Kind? He's trying to make you feel guilty. It's manipulation. But it wasn't manipulation, it was grace. It was the kind of person Caleb had always been, even when I didn't deserve it. I think, I said slowly, that I need some time to process all of this. What do you mean? I mean, I need some space. Some time to figure out who I am outside of being married to Caleb, but also outside of being with you. Rafa's expression shifted, becoming harder. You're not serious. I am. I think I've been running from one relationship to another without ever stopping to understand what I actually want. What you want is to be happy. What you want is to be with someone who appreciates you. Maybe, but I need to figure out what happiness looks like for me, not what it looks like for you or for anyone else. He argued, pleaded, reminded me of everything we'd been through together and all the plans we'd made. But for the first time in months, his words didn't sway me. I was finally ready to stop letting other people tell me what I should want. 3 months later, I was living in a small studio apartment across town, working at a new job, and slowly rebuilding my life from scratch. The restitution to Caleb had been financially difficult, but emotionally necessary, a way of acknowledging the damage I'd done and taking responsibility for my choices. I ran into him once at a coffee shop downtown. He looked good, healthier, more relaxed than I'd seen him in years. We exchanged pleasantries, careful and polite, like acquaintances, rather than people who'd once shared everything. "How are you doing?" he asked, and I could tell he genuinely wanted to know. "Better," I said, and meant it. Learning to be alone, learning to like myself without needing someone else to validate that. He smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from him since before everything fell apart. "That's good, Ianthe. You deserve to be happy. So do you." As we parted ways, I realized that this was what closure felt like, not dramatic confrontations or grand gestures, but quiet acknowledgement of what had been lost and what had been learned. I never saw Rafa again after that day in my old apartment. He'd moved on quickly to someone else who needed saving from their boring, stable relationship. I wished her luck. The divorce papers still sit in my filing cabinet, a reminder of the price of self-deception and the cost of betraying someone who loved you. But they're also a reminder that sometimes losing everything is the only way to find out who you really are. I'm still figuring that out, but for the first time in years, I'm doing it honestly.